Well, hello, Hollis. It's nice to chat with you again. We had that lovely talk about your many connections to music and the influence Bach had on you as a composer. I enjoyed that very much. We did that not too long ago. And but today I am so pleased to be talking to you about a project that we've agreed to do together for the future. It's going to be the world premiere of another one of your compositions. And I, again, want to thank you for entrusting me the honor of getting to conduct that premiere. It's your Requiem that we're going to do in November, the first Sunday of November, November 7th of 2021. We know that the first Sunday of November in church liturgical years as All Saints. And you wrote this, I'd love to get you to talk about it, but my understanding is you wrote this as a very wonderful and humanized response to this COVID pandemic we've suffered through. And we have to probably wait all the way until that next fall, but to present this premiere, but we are already looking forward to that. Tell me about the piece a little bit.
Well, thank you, Herb. I really appreciate you doing another one of my pieces. Yes, Bach is very influential on this piece. There are 5 movements, and each of them sort of tap into the influence of Bach. And this is my second Requiem. My first Requiem was Requiem for 9/11, which was composed in 2003 and has received many performances. And so as a result of the coronavirus, I thought I would tap in again to the Requiem idea, only this is a completely different work. But we need to have kind of a group community remembrance of the loss and suffering and the hope that a Requiem brings.
You know what, I want to thank you for that, because as a society, we do need to really mourn together and remember together and work together for a brighter future. And let me just add one little thing. Let's hope you don't have a reason to write a third one. With 2 awful things, just so minutes relatively closely together is enough for more than a lifetime. But please, so tell us a little bit about, so you said 5 movements, I think, right?
That's right, 5 movements.
Tell me about the first movement.
Well, the first movement is most of these, except for the last movement, most of these pieces were written 20 or 30 years ago. In fact, this first movement is a mini Brandenburg concerto for strings, nine strings. I wrote this in 1999, and it was premiered at Eastman School of Music with my daughter, Sonia, conducting an ensemble at the Eastman School of Music. And it was definitely a homage to J.S. Bach. It is kind of imitating one of his Brandenburg concertos. And so it's a kind of a complex piece, but it gives a certain kind of context to set up for the rest of the Requiem.
I like very much connecting. Bach died in 1750. That's a long time ago. And yet his music still speaks to us today in a fresh and deeply powerful way. But I also think it's important to continue to nurture music as we go forward. And so I'm particularly drawn to your work because of your connection to Bach. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that right away in this opening movement, because we are the Bach concert series, Bach in Baltimore. And yet I think Bach lovers will find a lot of beauty and pleasure in your music. So that's really a terrific connection. What's the instrumentation of the work overall?
Well, it's for 9 strings, 4 violins, 2 violas, 2 cellos, and double bass, and then oboe and horn come in on movements 2, 3, and 4, and soprano and baritone. So the second movement is an aria, and it's imitating one of Bach's, let's say a way Bach would do an aria in a cantata, and it's for oboe, his favorite instrument, and violin and cello and soprano. And it's based on a prayer that someone I knew wrote for for a friend of mine whose daughter got cancer. And because she fought cancer, she survived it, and they asked me to write this piece. And it's a prayer to God to strengthen the family who is suffering at this particular time. So it's a aria of hope, but it's an aria of prayer to God to give a person enough strength in the time of crisis. So
that's again a perfect parallel to what we've all been going through recently. So I appreciate that. And then you have 3 more movements, right?
Right. Well, the third movement was a piece I wrote for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary 25 years ago. And Jackie and I just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. But I wrote this piece. It's for oboe, soprano, and strings, based on 1 Corinthians 13 about love never ends. And so this particular movement is one of hope. No matter what the tribulation or troubles there are, love will get us through. And so it's a very powerful text. And I think modestly, this is one of my best pieces. And it is a piece of hope for love never ends for us. Then the fourth movement is a piece I wrote for Jackie for organ in 1976, and she played.
And Jackie is your wife.
Jackie's
who
my
I
wife.
happen to know and think of as a good friend, but I'm not sure everybody who's joining us today by video knows who Jackie is.
Jackie's my wife.
And also a fine musician in her own right.
Yeah, she sung in your choir for many years, and she enjoyed singing in the Bach concert series. And she also, earlier in her career, she got a master's degree in organ and gave 2 recitals. And on one of the recitals, I wrote this piece for her, 3-movement work. And so I adapted that work, part of that work, in the 4th movement. And what it is, it's a setting of a hymn. And so here I try to imitate Bach by putting the chorale not at the end, but in the middle of the work. And it's a famous hymn by Hugo Dissler called I Wish That I Were Going Home. And it's a setting for strings. It's from the organ piece I wrote for her, a setting of variations of that hymn. So I position the chorale in the middle of the work as opposed to the end. And then the second half of the 4th movement is my quote from my previous requiem of Herbst by Rainer Maria Rilke. So these two kind of, I wish that I were going home is the chorale, and the Rilke poem says, we all die, we all fall, yet there's one that holds us in his hands. So that particular piece is written to remember Treva, my daughter-in-law, who died this past year and who sang the Requiem and whose voice this Requiem was dedicated to. So it's a quote from a previous work, but it fits in beautifully with juxtapositioned with the chorale, I Wish That I Were Going Home.
So and now your 5th movement is based on it's kind of modeled after Bach Cantata 56, isn't it?
Right.
And Bach Cantata 56 is a solo cantata for a bass. I know from chatting with you previously, your dad used to like to sing that piece.
Right.
But the subject is I Will Carry the Cross Gladly in English. And I find myself, I've only performed Cantata 56 once, but I found myself thinking, you know, what an interesting and actually in many ways wonderful choice for this final movement, because carrying the cross is often a kind of a metaphor for human suffering that we have, you know, if you will, in this world, in our earthly existence, and for people who recognize the connection, it's a lovely added dimension. So I think I'm so glad you did that. Tell us a little bit more about that movement.
Well, that's one of a great little recitative where Bach paints the image of the believer as in a small boat over the turbulent sea. And so in that little recitative, Bach uses the cello to create the waves. And at the end of this little recitative, the believer finally gets to the shore, which is heaven. And so it kind of, Bach paints this picture of the sinner and the believer in turbulent waters coming to the calm of the harbor. And so I took that little 1 minute recitative and expanded it to 17 minutes. It's the longest work. It's for baritone and strings. And I pull in other literary allusions from Petrarch and Michelangelo, who used that same metaphor of boats. And so this becomes, and this is dedicated to my father, this last movement, because he sang this work, and he's no longer with us, but he went over the turbulent seas and is now in heaven. So this whole requiem is 5 movements of remembering different things, and in this time of crisis.
That's, that's a lovely connection to your dad. That warms my heart. And I know when I get to conduct this, that will be in the front of my mind as we perform, as it will be in yours, as we run through the performance that day. So let me wrap up by saying thank you so very much for taking time with me today, and for also entrusting me the chance to bring this piece to people in its first performance.
Well, thank you, Herb. Thank you for doing much of my music, and I appreciate it very much. Look forward to it.
My pleasure.